I can't understand the problem. Why they wouldn't? It seems like they're financially set enough to be paying you guys. Why exactly?
Oh, certainly they wouldn't feel that.
Huh? Are they so in arrears that it's such a large chunk of money that they just don't want to part with it?
Oh yeah. I mean, we went to court in '86 in London and got one payout, and then we thought the royalties would continue and that the artwork would be fixed for the lack of credit and all that, and it didn't happen. It went on and on and on and didn't happen. So, you know, we're at it again now to finally get it resolved once and for all.
Was the mangling of your names and other former band member names in the Ozman Cometh Greatest Hits thing? Was that kind of
that looks pretty deliberate to me. I mean, it's, you know, they have to oversee things that happen on album covers and give them the okay. And you know, if it had been one name, it might have been swallowable. But you know, three names like Rudy Sarzo is called Trudy Sarzo, Phil Susan is Bill Susan.
Yes.
And my name has obviously been incorrectly spelled as well. Who knows why they did it? Is it supposed to be funny, you know, some funny joke, or is it another reason that's, you know?
Yeah.
That was kind of stupid.
Yeah, juvenile.
Yeah, very juvenile. Yeah, and the fact that, you know, Kerslake and myself never ever had our credits on Diary of a Madman fixed. You know, they put stickers on them for a little while, and then I think last year sometime they on some of the CDs that came out, we had our name on it as playing on Diary. But now that they've done these new versions, they finally credited us to saying that we played on the original versions, and now here's somebody else doing it, which is just absurd. Fucking joke. You know, all the letters that have been coming in, even if you look at other sites, I mean, but all the letters that have been coming into my site that are on the notice board, and that's just one after the other saying what idiots they are and how dare they, and what a bastardization of a great product that is. It's and I spoke to Mrs. Rhodes the other day, Randy's mother,
right.
And she was saying how disappointed she was that they'd actually done something like that, because it affects Randy.
Right.
You know, Randy's playing does not shine now on those new versions like it did on the originals, because that was a band playing together, and that makes all the difference. And now it's just, and Randy's not here, and he didn't ever say in who they put his playing with.
Right.
You know, they copied the parts, but you know, copying parts, you can get a machine to do that. It's not going to have the human emotion or the vibes or the energies or the magic that the original ones had.
Right. It seems kind of cheeky for another musician to even have done it. I understand that they're.
Well, I think it's actually, you know, musically whoring yourself, because that's been a real mercenary. Although, you know, I suppose they could have been in the band, and it's like, do as you're told or fuck off.
Yeah.
They may have done that, but then again, you know, if somebody asked, you know, if I was, you know, hypothetically, obviously, if somebody, you know, if I was working with Jimi Hendrix or Robert Plant or somebody, and they said, well, go in and re-record what, you know, Mitch Mitchell and Noel Redding did, or John Bonham and John Paul Jones did, I wouldn't care how much they paid me. I'd just refuse. I would just say, I'm not going to be a part of, you know, a bad part of history.
Yeah.
You know, I would refuse to do that, regardless of how much money.
Just seems so incredibly pointless, and you can tell that they don't play the new versions on the radio. Though, since the reissues have come out, the incidence of those songs being played is certainly up. You know. Right.
So they get more airplay from the old stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, people are really pissed off too, because not only, you know, having done this in the first place is enough to piss people off, but they don't let people know with the labeling on the front of the album saying this is not the original band and these aren't the original recordings.
Right.
And people are pissed off with that, you know.
Yeah.
Well, they're pissed off enough that they actually did it in the first place, but to not let people know and sell this product like it was, you know, still the original, that's really wrong.
Right. You have to, I imagine, being far more intimate to the situation than I could ever have been. It's probably not Ozzy himself, because I imagine he probably doesn't take care much of the business or think about it at all?
I really don't know, but I would imagine he'd have to give his consent at the end of the day, and I would imagine that he'd have to be in there in the studio for some of it. At a, an educated guess. Whether I'm right there or not, I don't know, but I would have thought that he'd have to give his consent and at least go into the studio and oversee some of it.
Right.
I wouldn't say Ozzy's totally blameless here.
Right. Oh, no, certainly not. I mean, it's being done under his name. I think he just kind of
it's his name, it's his product, it's his history. It's and it's a real slur at the memory of Randy Rhoads as well.
Right. Something that was I always thought was equally as cheeky to do was I had always assumed that you had wrote the lyrics for a song like Suicide Solution.
Yeah, I did.
And then when the court case came up, which was from a legal standpoint just absurd that it could ever be brought, let alone won by a complainant, he certainly monopolized all the attention that he could off of that, and there was never, ever a mention that he didn't write the lyrics. And that
I know. Even in his interviews, he says, "Well, what I wrote it about was Bon Scott, and when I wrote this and when I wrote that. Hey, wait a minute. I wouldn't even mind it so much if he'd said when we wrote this.
Mm-hmm.
Considering he wrote one line in Suicide Solution. I mean, I came up with the title and the rest of the lyrics. He came up with wine is fine, but whiskey's quicker, and that's all he came up with for that song. And I wrote the rest, including the title and what it was about. And I wrote it about him. Because he got thrown out of Black Sabbath, and he was drunk all the time, and it was not doing himself any favors, and it wasn't a solution to the problem. So it was like the Suicide Solution, the word solution had a double meaning. Solution as in liquid, and solution to a problem. So, that's why I called it that. When Randy was first gone and there was a lot of press and Ozzy was doing interviews and that, he used to say things like, "Oh yeah, Randy and I wrote everything." Totally left me and Kerslake out of it. Lee came up with stuff for Diary of a Madman. Some of the vocal melodies and some, musical ideas and arrangement ideas and, all sorts of things. That's why he's credited on 6 songs.
Right.
So we put a lot of work into the musical side of things when Ozzy wasn't even there sometimes. When he first heard Diary of a Madman, he came in and he heard just the musical part of it that we'd all put together. And he said, "Who the fuck do you think I am? Frank Zappa. I can't sing over that." And then we showed him where the vocal parts would go and what they would do, and then he liked it. But it was beyond his understanding at first. He just thought it was... Because it did have funny timings in it and, clever little bits and whatever, and he couldn't quite grasp it at first.
Right. Were those 2 albums, as legend held it, pretty much written and recorded at the same time and just kind of staggered
No,
release?
They weren't. No. I've seen that in print so many times. No. Blizzard of Oz we began the writing for that at the end of 1979, and we pretty much completed the writing for it when Lee joined the band, beginning of 1980. Lee didn't join until about, it must have been February or beginning of March. And then we completed the writing. We went in and recorded Blizzard in March 1980. Then we went on the road. We did some touring around England and Scotland, Wales, and what have you. I think we may have gone to Ireland as well, or that might have been later. But then towards the end of 1980, we began writing the stuff for Diary of a Madman, and then we completed the writing of Diary of a Madman at the beginning of 1981. And then we went into the studio, I can't remember the exact month, but it was roughly a year after Blizzard of Oz was recorded. So they're about a year apart. And I think people tend to think that we wrote a shitload of stuff and went in and recorded 2 albums and had them both in the can. But it didn't happen like that. They were about a year apart.
Sound
for a
was
start,
different.
the first album and the second album, Randy had some different guitars in the second album that he didn't have for the first one. I used a different bass and a different amp on the second one than I did to the first one. In the first album, I used a Gibson EB3 through a Marshall head that was one of Randy's Marshall 100-watt guitar heads and a 4x12 cab, I think. Second album, I used my 61 Fender P bass through an SVT with an 8x10.